pornography makes their brain, it changes the dopamine structure in their brain. And they start believing that they can get women like this. And if you've ever seen men shooting their shot, sliding in the DMs and saying like horribly pornographic and perverted things to women, this comes from watching porn. This comes from this unrealistic belief that women are like the women they see in these pornographic films. And so that's where they get a perceived dilemma of choice, where there's like, they don't want to, there's one study, it's at the end of the book, The Evolution of Desire, somewhere in the middle maybe, where he talks about the concept of it, when men keep seeing non-contextualized images of attractive women or sexualized images of women, they start finding their own partner more and more unattractive. Let me say that one more time. As men watch more porn, they start to find their partner more and more unattractive. Got it? Okay. I want to make sure everybody understands I'm critical of men here. Now, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Let's watch what happens when this goes viral. The opposite thing is when women are on dating apps or when women are on Instagram, they get so much attention from lower status men. And ladies, if you want to know what low status men look like, they're the ones who leave you the heart eye emojis who don't even know you. You've never messaged them before. They're giving you a ton of attention because men give away their attention. It lowers their value. So these low status men are giving them massive amounts of attention. And let's say they go on OnlyFans and they start getting paid for their physical attractiveness, and they start pushing the limit. They start doing more and more lascivious behavior on there, and then they start getting attention. What happens is women, I think, to a certain extent, do not understand the level. If you're like a girl who's an exotic dancer, she probably understands this, but like they don't understand the level to which men will lie about giving up long-term optionality in order to gain short-term sex. Meaning, you and I, as a man, if we had a daughter and there was some guy coming around trying to date our daughter, we know what's going on in his head because we're men. We understand. It's like he's trying to fuck above everything else. We know that's the case, but we don't. But I think women often they don't understand the level, the extent to which men would be willing to lie in order to have sex. And so what happens is they get right swipe, and they might have 100 or 200 matches or 1,000 matches on a dating app and think that all of these men, or at least a portion of these men, are interested in long-term dating options, when in reality, none of them are. Your decision to get the tattoos in between your boobs and the fucking nose ring and all the piercings and you become overweight. Men are still interested in you for short-term sexual access, but they're not interested in you at all long-term. And they come on my show. I see them all the time. And they start telling me stories about, no, high status men want to date me. And I've been engaged 7 times and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you've been engaged 7 times. That's it. Like, dudes are willing to spend money. They're willing to do anything to have sex with you, but no one wants to lock you down. And the next thing you know, by the time they come to the realization of what's going on, they're 32, 33. And then it's like they have one of the strangest things that happens, Frank, there's another, I believe it was Ryan Terabin who told me this. As women get older, they actually get more picky, which actually makes the whole price of sex thing even more disparaging. Or more of a gap in between the price of sex between men and women. So that's when we get into like just crazy numbers where, you're going to have, it's really interesting that the age of first marriage in the United States is 29. And the reason why that is because that is the point at which women still have the advantage. So they want to cash out of the sexual marketplace, find a man that they can marry very quickly at 29 and then move forward. Once after 29, the higher status men, the guys who do make $200,000 a year, very good looking, higher status guys, they're not looking for a wife who's 32, 33, 34. They want to have children. And so because of that, that's when we get into a situation where a lot of them, it hits them like a ton of bricks. It's like, wait a second, these guys who are interested in me when I'm 23, they still want to have sex with me when I'm 33. They're just not interested in committing long term. And it's one of the wildest things because 2 of my best friends are females and they're both 38 years old. One of them, she's been married for 10 years and the other one, she's been single for 10 years. And I watch the 2 of them and it's very clear. Like, one of them is like, yeah, I'm really glad I locked this guy down 10 years ago. And the other one is like, I don't know what I was thinking, because she's a playmate, because she's so attractive. She can keep it. She's going to be 44 years old and she's still going to attract a lot of men, but she's going to have a hard time getting certain men to take her seriously because of how old she is. And it is an unfortunate double standard of biology, but it's still true.
What role, if any, and responsibility do men play in this? You gave that example of the woman that's been engaged 7 times, right? I think she came on your show and she's talking about how she's attracting all these high status men. Here's 7 guys that are willing to not just invest their time and energy, but actually take this to, hey, I'm gonna start this process of going down towards marriage. Now, obviously, they wake up, they get out of it, but there's got to be an element of men taking responsibility in some of this perceived attraction as well.
So I've said this before. There are three genders: high status men, women, and low status men. High status men
Say that again. Three genders.
There's three
High
genders:
status-
high status men, women, and low status men. These are the three genders. High status men and low status men have absolutely nothing to do with each other neurologically. They have different number of lifetime sexual partners. They have different life expectancies, different levels of happiness. They have a different amount of children, vastly different incomes. And so there's a massive difference. There's a book called The Winner Effect you can read, which goes over the neurology of being able to win. High status men have like, if you want to, when women say men, oh, I can't stand it, all men cheat. What they're talking about is high status men who cheat. All low status men don't cheat. They don't have the option to cheat. The guy who's the assistant manager at the fucking, Walmart in Des Moines, Iowa, he doesn't have the option to cheat. He barely has the option to meet any women whatsoever. So the vast majority of men are not in that situation. The guy who manages the McDonald's in Waco, Texas, is just not cheating. He doesn't have anyone to cheat with. So the main issue there is when you see these three genders, when you say, what are the high status men doing? They're taking advantage of all of this chaos that's been created by social media and dating apps, etc. These high status men are the ones getting swiped on. The top 10% of men on dating apps get 63% of the right swipes. They're having a great time. There's a group of men at the top. Like when you consider this, right? Let's say the bottom third of men. So there's been different studies that show this. There's one that shows a third of men under the age of 24 haven't had sex in a year. There's another one where it was up to, it's not this number, it's not this high anymore, but it was up to about 28% of men under the age of 30 had zero sexual partners in the last year. So let's just say, for sake of argument, the bottom third of men have had 0, 1, or 2 sexual partners in their life. Then let's say the mean is about 7. Let's just say the average guy in his entire life has had 7 sexual partners. Then in the top 5%, we should see something like 12 or 13 sexual partners. We don't. In the top 5%, we see 50. And then when the top 1%, Frank, we see 150. So 0, 7, 150. Does that sound equitable to you? Does that sound linear? Or does it sound like a small group of men at the top are like, have 7 dates a week, and there's a massive group of men at the bottom who are really sad subscribing to your girl's OnlyFans? That's where the world has gotten to. And the reason why that is, and the reason why fewer and fewer women are settling down, and we have the lowest rate of marriage in recorded history. And the part of the reason why that is because of, like I said before, the perceived choice and the optionality that women perceive that they have that they don't actually have. It's really hard. You'll meet these women, they're beautiful. They're in their 30s. They're stunning. They're in really good shape. And they just keep waiting for this perfect guy to come along and just don't realize you have that perfect guy. You left him when you were 25. You just weren't interested. You wanted to date Chad Thundercock and fucking Brock the bartender. You wanted to date Victor the VIP host, and you just left the good man back there. And that's essentially what happened. So that's where we are. We're just in a wash of options, or we're in a wash of perceived options. And as a result, none of us are getting married. None of us are really hooking up.
Yeah, those stats around the dating apps and the swipes and the sexual partners, man, that's like Pareto's principle, universal law, like just at play, right? You know,
but it wasn't always like this. When you have encouraged monogamy. So for instance, in India, you have arranged marriages. Because the men there have arranged marriages, you actually see the men in the bottom third all have at least one wife. But because of that, they never work on the skill set to meet women. And so because of that, that's when you have the Indian men going, oh, I would like to see Bob's and Vagine. Where does that come from? That comes from men having zero calibration. By the way, it was KJ, Shidich. I forgot the guy's last name. He's a very famous Indian dating coach. He came and he just did my show recently, and he was explaining all of this to me. And it was just like, we don't have the same issue of like men being virgins in their 30s because we have arranged marriage in my country. And so like the high rates of arranged marriage. You asked a question before, Frank, and I never got to the answer. The answer was, what can men do different, or where are men messing out? It's like men do not, again, this is the problem, is you'll see people go on shows just like this and they'll start complaining about women. I have no complaints about women whatsoever, or about the fact of my position in the world. It is a privilege that when I have a family, that I am the man who grabs the shotgun and goes downstairs when there's an intruder. That is a privilege. I do not shun that privilege. It was a privilege that I got to serve for 7 years in the U.S. military. That is a privilege. I don't look at it and be like, I heard Mia Khalifa the other day saying something like, when you join the military, that's worse than porn because you're giving your body to the government. And I was like, she can believe whatever she wants. I didn't join the military for me. I joined it for her. I joined it for your freedom. That's why I joined. So it was a privilege for me to do that. It is a privilege for me to protect, provide, and provision for my family. I do not see it as a burden. And do I know that I belong to the gender that is far more expendable? Absolutely, I know that. And I don't shun it whatsoever, because I'd rather be I love being a man and I don't have any issue with this whatsoever. It's not a complaint. It's just one of these situations where like you're playing a sport and all of a sudden one year they change the rules and the next year they change the rules. And I just want to know what the rules are. That's all I want to know is what the rules are. And my job as far as being a performance coach is I keep trying to explain to men what the new rules are.